Imagine waking up one day, feeling the weight of a deep, unshakable exhaustion in your bones. Your body aches, your mind is foggy, and something inside you feels lost, unmoored from the rhythm of life. It's not a physical injury, not an illness you can name. It's something deeper, more pervasive, a kind of emotional or psychological pain that you can't escape, no matter how hard you try. And yet, no one else can see it. You go through the motions of your day work, conversations, small tasks, but the underlying heaviness never leaves you. You feel like a ghost in your own life, tethered only by the invisible threads of suffering that seem to define you. Now, ask yourself this: who are you, really, when the pain you carry becomes your most defining feature? What happens when your past, filled with its losses and struggles, merges with your present, shaping not just your memories, but the way you perceive the world? What happens when you begin to wonder if the pain you carry is the only thing that makes you real, that makes you you? The paradox here is chilling. We do everything in our power to avoid it, whether by distracting ourselves, seeking comfort, or numbing our emotions with the artificial balm of substances or distractions. Pain, we are told, is something to conquer, to rise above, to defeat. And yet, on the other hand, pain is also what gives us depth. It's what shapes us, forges our character, and even determines how we relate to others. It's what makes us human. But what if the pain you carry has become more than just a temporary experience? It has become the lens through which you see yourself and the world. What if, instead of being something you overcome, your pain has woven itself into the very fabric of your identity? What if the pain has become so ingrained in your sense of self that it now defines you, whether you realize it or not? We're told that suffering is temporary, that if we work hard enough, we'll eventually transcend it. But what if this idea is a lie? What if pain isn't just something we endure and move beyond, but something that alters us forever? What if it leaves a permanent mark on who we are, on the very core of our being, and that mark can never be erased? You may not have the answers to these questions yet, but they linger, don't they? The discomfort of not knowing who you are without the pain, of wondering if there's even a you to be discovered outside of the suffering. The truth is, pain has a unique way of shaping the contours of your identity. It becomes a part of you in ways that are both profound and unsettling. What if you've been living in a prison built from your own pain, confined by the very experiences you've tried so hard to leave behind? And if pain is a force that shapes you so deeply, can you ever escape it, or are you destined to be forever defined by what you've suffered? As these questions settle in, one thing becomes clear. The next step on this journey lies not in avoiding pain or fighting it, but in understanding it. Understanding how it molds you, how it defines your identity, and, perhaps, how it can set you free or imprison you even further. Pain, in its many forms, is not just an event. It is a force that reshapes the very architecture of our minds and hearts. It's like a sculptor carving away at marble. Each experience, each bruise, each wound, slowly chisels away at our sense of self, leaving behind something that is simultaneously more defined and more fractured. We don't just experience pain, we become it. But why is this so? Why does pain infiltrate our identity in ways that joy or happiness rarely do? To understand the psychological and philosophical roots of this phenomenon, we must first look at how pain functions in the human psyche. In many ways, we are wired to remember pain more vividly than pleasure. Neuroscientific studies show that the brain registers pain with far greater intensity than positive stimuli, and that the memory of pain is more persistent. This is an evolutionary adaptation designed to help us avoid danger and learn from our experiences. If pain is linked to survival, then perhaps it's no wonder that we grow so attached to it. It teaches us lessons, it forces us to change, and in the process, it becomes part of us. But there's more to this than just survival instinct. When we experience a traumatic event or prolonged emotional distress, our self-concept begins to shift. We start to identify with the pain rather than seeing it as something separate from who we are. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, referred to this as the creation of the shadow. the unconscious parts of the self that are repressed or ignored. Pain, in this context, becomes part of our shadow, something we bury and try to hide, but which continues to exert its influence over our thoughts, behaviors, and choices. It's the part of us we don't want to acknowledge, the part we fear will consume us if we let it. Jung's concept of the shadow suggests that these unacknowledged aspects of ourselves don't just disappear, they shape the way we interact with the world. The more we try to suppress or ignore the pain, the more it subtly alters the direction of our lives. We start to make decisions based on avoiding further pain, often without realizing it. In a way, we become prisoners to our own suffering. Every step we take is tainted by the shadow of what we've endured. But pain also shapes us on a deeper, more existential level. Friedrich Nietzsche, in his philosophy of the Übermensch, the Overman, argued that suffering and hardship are not to be avoided, but embraced. Nietzsche believed that it is through the experience of pain that we can transcend our limitations and create meaning in an otherwise meaningless world. For him, pain was a catalyst for growth, a necessary condition for the creation of a strong, authentic self. And yet, this idea that pain is not just something to endure, but something to use in the formation of our identity, presents a dangerous paradox. While Nietzsche's philosophy invites us to become stronger through suffering, it also risks romanticizing pain. The temptation is to view pain as an essential part of the human experience, something that makes us who we are, something we cannot live without. In his most famous work, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche declares, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." But is this always true? Can pain truly strengthen us, or does it only deepen the scars, carving us into something less whole, less balanced? The truth is that pain, when it is embraced without reflection, can become a prison. It can overshadow every other part of our existence. It can define us in ways that no other experience can. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, understood this all too well. In his seminal work, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl writes about his time in the concentration camps, where suffering was relentless and unimaginable. Yet, despite the horrific conditions, Frankl observed that those who found meaning in their pain, those who could see beyond the suffering, were more likely to survive. Pain, in this context, was not something to be avoided, but something to be transformed into meaning. Frankl's insight reveals a critical truth about the relationship between pain and identity. The way we interpret our suffering ultimately shapes who we become. Pain doesn't define us by itself. It is the meaning we attach to it, the stories we tell ourselves about it, that becomes the blueprint for our identity. Those who see their pain as a source of growth and meaning tend to find greater purpose in their lives. But those who see it as something to be overcome, avoided, or hidden may become trapped in a cycle of self-doubt and despair. This dynamic is at the heart of the problem, our tendency to over-identify with our pain. Instead of recognizing it as a passing experience, something that can be processed and integrated, we internalize it, letting it become the foundation of who we are. This is especially true in a culture that often prioritizes strength and success over vulnerability. We are taught to hide our weaknesses, to push through our pain, to keep moving forward no matter what. And in doing so, we risk creating an identity that is built on the very things we're trying to escape. The more we resist pain, the more it becomes a part of us. The question now is, how do we break free from this cycle? How do we reclaim our identity from the clutches of pain without losing the lessons it offers? What happens when pain defines your very essence? What becomes of you when the scars, both visible and hidden, shape every decision, every action, every interaction with the world around you? These consequences are not always immediately obvious, but they are deeply ingrained in the way you navigate your life. The pain you've internalized, whether from childhood trauma, lost love, failure, or injustice, becomes an invisible force that molds your thoughts, shapes your beliefs, and even dictates your behavior. Perhaps you've never noticed it before, but once you start to look closely, the effects are everywhere. The way you react to small setbacks too harshly, too defensively, the way you avoid certain situations or people, not because they're objectively dangerous, but because they remind you of your vulnerability, the way you second-guess yourself, even when you know you're capable, because you don't trust that you can endure the fallout of failure. Pain, in this way, becomes a filter through which you perceive reality. One of the most insidious consequences of over-identifying with pain is the creation of cognitive biases, mental shortcuts that skew your perception of yourself and the world. These biases are not just abstract concepts. They are the subconscious mechanisms that shape your decisions, your relationships, and your identity. One of the most common of these is the confirmation bias. You begin to look for evidence that supports your belief that you are defined by your pain. You seek out situations where you can be reminded of your past suffering, reinforcing the idea that this pain is not just something you've gone through, but something you are. For instance, consider the individual who has experienced heartbreak in the past. They might find themselves in a new relationship, yet constantly fearing that history will repeat itself. Every small mistake or miscommunication becomes a sign of impending doom. This fear, rooted in the pain of the past, distorts their view of the present. Instead of being able to see the current relationship for what it is, an opportunity for connection, growth, and joy, they are trapped by the specter of past suffering. They don't just remember their pain, they relive it over and over again, clouding their ability to fully engage with the world around them. Neurologically, the brain works in similar ways. When we experience pain, whether physical or emotional, the neural pathways associated with that pain become reinforced. Over time, these pathways become stronger, more automatic. The brain essentially learns to associate certain triggers with the emotional pain of the past. Every time we encounter a similar situation, those same pathways light up, bringing the past into the present. This is why certain events, people, or even places can make you feel as though you're back in the moment of trauma, even though the external circumstances may have changed. The pain has become so deeply embedded in your neural wiring that it feels as though it's a constant companion, a part of your identity that you cannot escape. But the consequences of living in this cycle go even deeper. When pain defines your identity, you begin to lose touch with your true self. Your life becomes dominated by survival instincts rather than authentic expression. You may find yourself continually seeking out situations that reinforce your pain, as though you need proof that it's real, that it matters. This pattern is especially common in those who have suffered prolonged or unresolved trauma. They may subconsciously seek out relationships, jobs, or experiences that mirror their past suffering, believing that they don't deserve anything else. In this way, pain becomes not just a part of the past, but an ongoing force that dictates their future. It's also important to recognize that pain doesn't just affect your inner world, it profoundly shapes your outer world as well. How you engage with others, how you form relationships, and how you interact with society is often influenced by the pain you carry. If you've been betrayed, for example, you may approach relationships with suspicion, even when trust is warranted. If you've been rejected or criticized, you may develop a tendency to avoid vulnerability, keeping others at arm's length to protect yourself from future hurt. But the worst part is that you may not even realize you're doing this. The pain has become so ingrained in your identity that it feels like a natural part of who you are. You may think that you are simply being cautious or being smart, but in reality, you are letting your past experiences govern your present. You are living not as the person you are now, but as the person you were when that pain was first inflicted. And in doing so, you close yourself off from new possibilities, from the potential of growth and transformation. There is a psychological phenomenon known as learned helplessness, which is particularly relevant here. This is when, after experiencing repeated failure or trauma, a person begins to believe they have no control over their circumstances. They stop trying to change their situation because they no longer believe it's possible. In this state, pain becomes a lens through which they view the world, leading them to believe that no matter what they do, they will never escape it. The more they suffer, the more they identify with their suffering, until they begin to see themselves as nothing more than victims of their past. This is a vicious cycle. The pain becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You can't break free from it because you've come to believe that it's inescapable. You become trapped in a narrative that defines you as someone who is perpetually broken, perpetually hurt. And so, every decision, every interaction becomes filtered through that lens. Your identity, once a dynamic, evolving thing, becomes static, defined only by what you've endured. The unseen consequences of this pain-identity connection are profound. You may begin to live a life that is disconnected from your true potential, trapped by the limitations you've imposed on yourself. You may start to avoid challenges, relationships, and opportunities because you've come to believe they are too risky, too painful, or too hard. You may even begin to feel like you don't deserve joy, success, or love because your pain has come to define you as someone unworthy. The real tragedy is that, in holding on to your pain as the foundation of your identity, you rob yourself of the chance to transform. You remain tethered to a past that no longer serves you, and in doing so, you forfeit the future you could create. It's easy to feel helpless when pain becomes so deeply intertwined with your identity. When it feels like every step you take is weighed down by the heavy chains of your past suffering, it seems impossible to move forward. But what if I told you that there is a way to break free from this cycle? A way to transform your pain into a tool of empowerment instead of a prison? The first step in this rebellion is not to deny the pain or try to push it away. That would only create more resistance, more suffering. Instead, the rebellion begins with acknowledging your pain not as your identity, but as an experience. This is an important distinction. Your pain is not who you are. It is something that you've lived through. It is a chapter in your story, but it is not the whole book. The moment you separate your identity from your pain is the moment you begin to regain control over your life. But this is no easy feat. It requires the courage to confront the pain head-on, to sit with it, and to feel it without letting it consume you. Imagine this. Instead of pushing your pain aside or burying it deeper, you invite it to sit beside you. You don't run from it, but you don't let it dictate your every move either. You create space for it, acknowledging its presence, honoring its lessons, but refusing to allow it to define who you are or where you are going. This is the paradox of healing. To move beyond your pain, you must first fully embrace it, not as a part of you, but as an experience that you have lived through and can learn from. As philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre argued, we are not defined by our past. We are defined by how we choose to respond to it. Pain, then, is not a sentence. It's an opportunity to choose who we will become, regardless of what we've endured. The second step in breaking free is to reclaim your narrative. This is where the real power lies. We've all heard the saying, "You are the author of your own story." But when pain defines you, you forget that you have the pen in your hand. Instead, you let your pain write the narrative for you. The tragedy here is that, by allowing pain to dictate your story, you are losing the chance to shape your life in the direction you truly desire. Pain, after all, is only one element of the human experience. It is not the whole story. Reclaiming your narrative means asking yourself tough questions. How much of my story has been shaped by pain? How much of who I am today is based on what I've suffered? What would my story look like if I let go of the idea that pain is the defining force in my life? This process isn't about forgetting or erasing the pain, it's about choosing how you want to interpret it. Instead of seeing your pain as something that diminishes you, what if you began to view it as something that has made you stronger, more resilient, more compassionate? What if you told yourself that your pain was not the thing that weakens you, but the thing that makes you more human, more connected to others? This shift in perspective is liberating. It allows you to see your pain not as a burden, but as a teacher. Every experience of suffering, every wound, holds a lesson. It teaches you about your own strength, your capacity for growth, and your ability to rise from the ashes of hardship. By reframing your pain, you take back the power that was once stolen from you. You make the conscious decision to own your story, rather than letting your story own you. The third step in the rebellion is to let go of the victim mentality. For so long, pain has led you to believe that you are powerless, that your suffering has made you a victim of circumstance. But here's the radical truth. Being a victim is a choice. It's a choice to define yourself by your pain and to believe that you are at the mercy of the world's injustices. The rebellion begins the moment you stop seeing yourself as a victim and start seeing yourself as a survivor, someone who has lived through their pain and is choosing to live beyond it. Viktor Frankl, in his book Man's Search for Meaning, demonstrated this powerfully. In the concentration camps, he observed that those who found meaning in their suffering, those who refused to see themselves as victims, were more likely to survive. Frankl's insight was that, even in the most brutal conditions, we always have the power to choose our response. We cannot control what happens to us, but we can control how we interpret and react to it. This is the essence of freedom. It's time to stop living in reaction to your pain. It's time to stop letting the past control your future. To break free, you must choose to move forward, not because the pain disappears, but because you've decided that you will not let it be the sole determinant of your identity. You can acknowledge the pain, you can learn from it, but you do not have to be bound by it. The final step in this rebellion is to embrace vulnerability. This may seem counterintuitive after all. If pain has made you strong, why would you want to risk opening yourself up again? But vulnerability is not weakness, it is strength. It is the courage to face the unknown, to expose your true self to the world, even when there is the possibility of more pain. When you open yourself to vulnerability, you open yourself to connection. You allow others to see you as you truly are, not as the victim of your past, but as someone who has overcome, someone who is still growing, still evolving. This openness allows you to form deeper relationships, to experience love and joy in ways that you might have shut yourself off from in the past. Vulnerability is the ultimate act of rebellion against pain. It is the act of living fully, despite the scars, despite the fear. The rebellion isn't about erasing your pain, it's about choosing to live with it, but not let it define you. It's about stepping into your own power and rewriting your narrative, no longer as a victim of circumstance, but as the creator of your own story. It's about letting go of the chains of the past and choosing to move forward into a future that you design, one where pain is no longer your prison, but your teacher. As you embark on this journey of breaking free from the grip of pain, there is one realization that will strike you with the force of a revelation, a truth so powerful that it will fundamentally shift the way you see yourself, your past, and your future. This is the final insight, the deep understanding that transcends all others. The truth is this: pain does not define you. Your response to it does. Think about that for a moment. The pain you've carried, the suffering that has etched its marks into your soul, has been a defining part of your experience. But it has only shaped you if you've allowed it to. The essential truth lies not in the pain itself, but in the meaning you've attached to it, and in how you've chosen to respond to it. The way you choose to react to the pain, the way you allow it to either constrain you or empower you, is what ultimately defines your identity. This is where true freedom lies. For so long, you may have seen pain as a force that controls you, that shapes the limits of who you are and what you can do. You may have believed that the more you suffered, the less you were able to live fully. But now, you see that pain is simply one chapter in the story of your life. It's not the conclusion. It's not the end, and most importantly, it is not the measure of your worth. This realization is both liberating and terrifying. It's liberating because it means you are not a prisoner to your past. You don't have to live your life as if you are forever bound by what you've suffered. No matter how intense or prolonged the pain may have been, you have the ability to rewrite your story. You have the ability to choose your identity not based on what's happened to you, but based on what you choose to become in the face of it. But it's also terrifying, because it means you must take full responsibility for your own life. No longer can you blame your pain, your past, your wounds for the person you've become. The power to change, to evolve, to grow, is now squarely in your hands. And with this power comes the responsibility to rise above the limitations that pain has placed upon you. The ultimate realization is this: you are not your pain. You are the one who decides who you will become after it. This may seem like a subtle shift, but it is profound. It is the difference between being trapped in a cycle of suffering and being free to create a life that reflects who you truly are, not who you were made to be by your past experiences. The great philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre argued that existence precedes essence. In other words, we are not born with a predetermined nature or identity. We create ourselves through our choices and actions. When it comes to pain, this idea becomes even more powerful. You are not defined by the pain you've endured, but by how you choose to respond to it. Each moment of suffering presents you with a choice. You can either let it define you, limit you, and control your every action, or you can choose to see it as part of your story that you can transcend. You are not the sum of your suffering. You are the sum of your responses to it. This is the essence of healing. Healing doesn't mean erasing the pain. It means accepting it as part of your journey without letting it control your destiny. When you stop seeing yourself as a victim of your circumstances, when you stop viewing pain as something that has power over you, you gain the most incredible freedom. The freedom to shape your own identity. What does this mean for you practically? It means that you no longer have to live as though your pain is an insurmountable mountain. You no longer have to keep dragging the heavy weight of your past behind you as though it's the only thing that gives you depth. It means that you can begin to explore new possibilities, new ways of being, new ways of thinking without fear of your pain taking over. You can begin to experiment with who you want to be, not just who you've been made to be. In this space of freedom, you can redefine your relationship with pain itself. Instead of seeing it as a monster that must be conquered, you can view it as a teacher, a guide that shows you the places within yourself that need healing, the areas where you've been hurt and where you can now grow. Pain, in this sense, becomes a tool that can help you build a stronger, more authentic self, but only if you choose to engage with it consciously and with compassion. The key to this freedom lies in the most important shift of all: self-compassion. When you look at your pain through the lens of kindness, understanding, and patience, something miraculous happens. Instead of perpetuating cycles of self-blame or self-hatred, you begin to embrace your imperfections, your scars, as part of the human experience. You no longer seek to outrun your pain or escape it, but to live with it in a way that allows you to remain whole. This is the final form of healing, not perfection, not escape, but integration. When you finally realize that your identity is not bound to the pain you've endured, you are free to experience life as it was always meant to be experienced, in all its complexity, unpredictability, and richness. You can embrace your full, authentic self, not just the version of you shaped by hardship, but the person you've chosen to become despite it. In this moment, you see the most powerful truth of all. You are not defined by what has happened to you, but by what you choose to do with it. You have the power to shape your identity, to move forward with grace, and to let go of the weight of your past. The pain no longer has the power to dictate your future. You are the author of your own story. And as you step into this newfound freedom, you may feel a profound sense of peace, not because the pain has disappeared, but because you have finally made peace with it. You are no longer at war with your past. You are no longer bound to it. You are free to live, to grow, to become the person you were always meant to be. The final truth is this: pain does not define you. You define yourself in response to it.